Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Was Sealed for a Millennia. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Okay, you jackass. What did you want to get out of this? I thought you'd die and I'd be free, he said. Yeah, I thought that was the case, but it didn't work, and now we're both stuck like this for. I have no idea how long. Naruto said as he crossed his arms and sat down. Naruto is a young man who is about 166 centimeters tall and has a pretty good body. She was 16 years old, had spiked golden hair and bright blue eyes. He was in his own mind, sitting on top of the water in front of a big cage with a huge nine-tailed fox creature with red eyes. The Kyuubi that attacked his village the night he was born and almost wiped it out. Biggest asshole. The biggest jerk in the world decided to mess up his senjutsu training on purpose by taking in a lot of nature energy without telling Naruto. Then, when he and Pa Toad tried to join forces, he gave all the nature energy to Pa, turned Naruto into stone, and made Pa into a statue of a toad. Naruto's body in the real world was currently a stone statue, and no one knew if it would change back to normal one day or stay like that forever. No way to know, since he was the first stone Jinchuriki and no one had ever stayed awake while turning to stone before. The Kyuubi who was in front of him seemed very upset about his choice. After 4 years, Earth and the Moon collided. All life was wiped out when the huge continent was hit right in the middle. The world was thrown into a disaster unlike any other. When the Moon was sent back into orbit by the same collision that killed all life, it shattered the once huge continent so badly that it couldn't be put back together again. The statue of Naruto stayed. Since he was in the land of toads, he was safe from the waves of fire that came over him. This meant that his improved statue form didn't break. Even when the flood of the ocean washed over his body, it didn't move him from his spoke. His body was too heavy for even the flood of the ocean to easily lift. After 3 million years, a dinosaur's roar could be heard. Small dinosaurs that were hunting bugs near Naruto's statue ran away when they heard the dino roar that echoed through the area. The sky began to turn red, and then the ground began to shake again. The whole world was hit by a blast of fire. Somewhere on Earth, a huge meteor hit and set off a wave of fire so strong that it began to kill off most of the life on Earth. When the fire hit Naruto's statue, it didn't change in any way. The flames that tried to burn down the statue were not strong enough or hard enough to hurt it. The mind of Naruto. Well, life has just ended again. With the senjutsu state he was stuck in, Naruto could feel everything. He could tell that all the life on the continent had been killed off again. He groaned in frustration because he had been hoping that some of those life forms would figure out how to change him back. He made a palm face. You still had hope? I won't give up on it. Naruto looked at the tailed beast and laughed. By the way, his name was Kurama. When you spent about 3 million years with someone, give or take a few years, you learned a few things. He was stuck as a statue with no one to talk to except for a weird crow that would pop up out of nowhere and fly around the room for a while before going somewhere else. Kurama was barely awake to begin with. You can still have hope. Kurama spoke in a deep rumbling voice. I still have hope that one day I will be free. Naruto spoke once more. You still have hope after all this time? All I have is hope that one day I'll be able to get out of this prison and breathe some fresh air. The only thing Naruto wanted right then was a breath of fresh air. He and Kurama had been stuck together for so long that it was hard to know how many years or millions of years it had been. He hadn't been outside in a long time. His family was gone, but he had already gotten over his grief for them years ago. Since he was made of stone, he couldn't even train to kill time. Well, he could train, but he couldn't train with any new techniques. He was in a place where there were no elements, so he couldn't use ninjutsu that controlled them. He had forgotten most of the hand signs needed to use ninjutsu for a long time. He only remembered a few of them when he was reminded of them in a casual way. And let loose the tailed beasts that were locked in the statue. Is that statue still even around? Naruto remembered that the Akatsuki had a statue that was used to keep the tailed beasts locked up after they were stolen from their hosts. Since there were no tailed beasts in the world, that meant that they had all been locked away at some point. There was no way to know where the statue was in the world or if it was still there. If he couldn't feel it in his permanent sage mode, he was pretty sure it wasn't on this continent at least. After many years. Ew. A tribe of people touched Naruto's statue as they put a flower on top of it, and the flower grew. They cheered when they found the statue, and a few of the tribe's stronger men grabbed it and started to lift it up. They couldn't carry it far because it was too heavy, so they put it on top of a rock right outside their home cave. Even more time has passed. Ah. A tribe of wild people showed a better-dressed man their most prized statue. The man seemed interested. A few of them bowed to the statue. They would put a flower in front of it, and the flower would bloom. If they put a fruit seed near the statue, it would start to grow right away, as if the statue gave off a strong energy that sped up plant growth. The primitive people just worshipped the statue. It seems that this tribe of wild people had this statue for almost 200 years, which is a long time for sure. They wasted the statue's potential by letting simple barbarians use it to make flowers grow. The statue was much more powerful than that. The wild people were killed by his men. They put the statue on their cart before the blood from their spears had even dried. It was a one-sided victory, since their armor and metal weapons could never be matched by stone spears. After 150 years. Seen in translation. Yes, my fellow men, this statue has been my family's guardian god for thousands of years. Our god is the only reason we have such a good harvest. So please come forward and kiss the statue and put your gifts around it at the annual celebration. The story of this statue was told to him by his father. His father's father had told him a story about how this statue had been watching over their family for as long as anyone could remember. They told him that as long as they kept the statue, they would continue to be in charge of their people. That they would always have good harvests as long as they put flowers around the statue each year when it was time to gather the crops. People came up in a long line. They would put a flower on the statue and kiss it before moving on to let the next person in line do the same for their harvest god. After 5 years. Violence and deaths. Naruto's statue was stained with blood when the last people in the village were killed by invaders who wanted the statue's great power to grow food forever. They took the statue for themselves and loaded it up. They had studied the people's ways for several years. When they put a flower in front of the statue, it started to grow. Our victory was righteous, and the statue agrees with us. The warriors cheered when the god of the land gave his blessing to their victory. They put the statue on the cart and then took all of the crops from the people they killed. The mind of Naruto. I have no idea what's going on out there, but what? Naruto didn't know what was going on, but he could tell that a lot of life forces had just died. He couldn't feel or know how much he weighed, so he couldn't tell what was going on. However, the fact that 2 life forces were on either side of him suggested that he was being moved to a new place. Kurama didn't answer. Kurama hadn't done anything for a long time. It had been years since Kurama had even moved. He was getting thinner, and you could see his bones. That meant something to Naruto, but he didn't know what was going on. Kurama's chakra was slowly leaving his body and forming a sphere of chakra outside of the seal. Naruto's was a stone statue at the time. Since Kurama's body was made of stone, the seal that took small pieces of his chakra and mixed them with his own didn't work. Naruto couldn't break the seal because he didn't have the key to it. Kurama's chakra was being taken from him all the time, and the longer it went on, the faster it went. At the moment, his chakra was being taken from him faster than he could get it back, and that rate would only get faster. The statue let go of its extra chakra, but a big chunk of it just floated around in a sphere. Kurama was dying. He was a chakra being, and his body might come back to life someday, but this was the first time a tailed beast had died inside of its host while the host was still alive. No one knew if Kurama would come back while Naruto was still alive or if he would rebuild himself inside the seal. Kurama put off his own death as long as he could by not wasting chakra and concentrating on trying to break the seal. Many fucking years later. Yes, men, look at this. Just keep praying to the god, and we will always have food. Sailors. Naruto was currently on a ship with soil-filled barrels all around him. This time, the men who were in charge of his statue used him to make sure they could grow crops even on their boat. They found out that some people had access to a statue that could make food forever, so they stole it. Well, those people couldn't really complain because they also stole the statue by killing the people who had it before. In Naruto's mind. I'm so lonely. Kurama was gone. Kurama was no longer there, and so was his chakra. He had lost the last thing that tied him to his old life, and Naruto felt that he and Kurama had become friends after spending who knows how long with him. He wasn't sure, but now that his only friend in this world was gone, he was still lonely. The only annoying thing was the crow with the Sharingan eye. Strange that was in him, but he couldn't really talk to a crow, and the fact that it had a Sharingan eye was strange in and of itself. He didn't even know where the crow came from. I don't remember. I can't think of who put the crow in me. Naruto had trouble remembering a lot of things. Since it had been so long, he was starting to forget about everyone from his old life, except for the things he kept telling himself. He could remember things about himself, but he couldn't remember his best friend's name or face, and he didn't remember much else. He was alone and beginning to forget things. The information was in there somewhere, but for some reason, he couldn't remember it all. Now that Kurama was gone, the seal itself was starting to change. The water on the floor was turning into golden clouds, and the walls were getting foggy. Now that his soul didn't have to keep Kurama locked up, it was starting to show up in his seal. At least, that's what he thought Kurama would say. Stick it out, Naruto. Naruto spoke to himself. He was the last shinobi, and he would have to keep going through this until he was free. He hadn't forgotten about his dream or how he got his name. He hadn't forgotten about the only thing he wanted in this world. A pleasant surprise. He had to stay strong until he was free again, so he could enjoy the fresh air of freedom. Not just for his own sake, but also for Kurama's. It was the last thing he could give Kurama in order to be free again. So, their pain would not have been for nothing. I'll never give up hope. He was never going to give up. His nindo was that. Naruto always had nothing to do. His statue had been thrown into the ocean, a river, a lake, or somewhere else. He only knew that there were a lot of fish nearby. He could sometimes tell when people were near him, but no one found his statue and pulled him out of the water. He didn't know when the people who were taking his statue out on the water had been robbed, or if they hadn't been robbed but their ship had sunk instead. It had been. He didn't know how long it had been. Even though he didn't sleep, his mind was almost always awake because his body was always at rest. He didn't feel tired, so he had trouble sleeping even when he tried. It would be great if he could just sleep and let a lot of time go by without having to stay awake the whole time. Oh, yeah, people. Someone had found his statue. Years later is a movie. Monk on top. Yes, you young learner? The head monk asked his disciple as he bowed to him. In front of him, a group of monks were meditating and praying to the statue in front of them. People who came to learn about deep spiritual meditation found that the area around the statue was the best place to meditate and reach enlightenment. The statue grew plants and had such a strong life force. By meditating near the statue, one could feel what it was like to be one with nature. How everything around the monastery makes you feel. The Order of Nature monks were who they were. After finding the statue that helped their leaders become wise, they had been around for almost 200 years. Since the statue was their god, they spent their whole lives making the land around them better. They gave up their earthly wants in order to become one with nature and improve the environment around them. They worked toward peace and love, which you could feel just by looking at the statue's kind and gentle face. It was what kept their way of life safe. Is it right for us to try to live in peace and love when this statue has a history of violence and bloodshed? Yes, they did have scholars who knew about the statue's history. The statue had been around since the beginning of time, as shown by the cave paintings of it. It was a puzzle that not many people knew how to solve. Wherever the statue stood, people did well because of it. Around the statue, there were plenty of crops, a never-ending supply of food, soil that was always full of nutrients, and the fruits of the land were full of things that helped people stay alive. The energy-filled water near the statue would help people get better faster when they bathed in it. The head monk had been alive for 119 years. Even though he was very old, he was still healthy because he meditated near the statue, took in the energy it gave off, ate the food it made, and bathed in the water of their monastery. He had never been sick or sickened, and since the monks began to worship the statue, none of them had passed out from illness. We believe in peace and love, and we got the statue in a way that didn't involve blood. We are the chosen ones, the statue told us. This was what the head monk had said, and he was happy to say it again to anyone who asked. Even the youngest and most cocky monks were very patient with him when he told them about the statue's history. He had been told about the statue's long and bloody past. But they didn't want to get money or power from the statue. They just wanted to get better. When people came to visit, they fed them for free and taught them about their way of life. They let everyone come and go as they pleased and didn't take money from strangers in exchange for their help. No language got in the way. We found true peace by letting ourselves be surrounded by the statue. We can link up with other people's spirits and understand them. My heart and your heart are linked. The head monk spoke as he put his old hands on the bare chest of the young man. We are tied together because we trust what our guardian tells us. Come, sit in silence with me. The head monk sat down and put himself in the same position as the statue. When will I get my whiskers, head monk? You will get your whisker tattoos once you have learned to connect your heart to the hearts of others. It was part of their way of life that if you could talk to nature and share what was in your heart with other people, you were marked with signs that showed you were a peaceful master. You got the same lines on your cheeks as the statue, and you were allowed to let your hair grow out. When they were young, all monks had to shave their heads, but as they got closer to enlightenment, they were allowed to look more like the statue. Years later is a movie. Young one, etc. I'm sorry, head monk. I'm so sorry. I had to do it. The young monk, who was now an adult with whisker tattoos on his cheeks, talked as if the person who had taught him his way of life had been killed with a dagger. The statue. I'm sorry. But my family. His people had sent him because they wanted the statue. For years, he tried to get the monks to give up the statue. But that didn't change the fact that they all still believed in peace and love. He believed the same thing, but he was actually a spy sent by his country to get the statue. The head monk put a gentle hand on his face. You're forgiven. You. All of you were killed by my people. Since you didn't kill us, we can finally be one with nature. We've reached enlightenment. We have reached the top of nature love, just like our guardian. None of us will hate you. I pray that you will keep loving other people. The head monk pulled his killer's hand toward him and kissed the top of it. He didn't look like he hated anyone, which hurt the young man so much that he killed the man. Not just the man, but all of the monks in the temple. They didn't even try to fight back. They just let themselves be killed without even raising a finger. The statue's bloody past was over when the monks took it over. Only to be brought back by people who were greedy and told him to spy on these people and steal the statue for themselves. Good job, boy. Now show us how to get the statue to work. I'll protect this way of life, he said. As he nodded his head, the young monk thought. His heart changed when the man he killed told him he was sorry. He would lie, send his family to a safe place, and make up stories about how the statue worked. He would do anything he could to get back at the people who killed the people who welcomed him. Yes, the statue needs the prayers of a faithful monk to work. I'll keep the statue close to me and turn it on when you need it. He told a lie. The statue worked whether or not you prayed to it, but if he kept it close to him, he could steal it one day and move to a different land. Far from the hands of bad people who would use the statue for their own gain. Years later is a movie. Grandfather, my friend says that our statue doesn't have any power. Can I show him the statue's power? I don't see anything wrong with it. The man spoke as he thought about how his father had warned him about the statue, but no one had ever asked him about it. He was sure that letting the friend of his grandson see the power of the statue wouldn't hurt anything. He reached up and touched his cheeks where his whiskers were. Since his great-great-grandfather had fled a country to keep the statue safe, he was sure that enough time had passed for them. He looked at his sweet grandson, who had just gotten whisker tattoos of his own. When he started to learn how to meditate in front of the statue, his father marked him with his whisker marks. He also taught his daughter about their tradition. But because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to get the tattoos because only the men in the family had them so far, and he wasn't sure if it was okay to give them to women. She cared about the tradition, so when her son was old enough, she had him get tattoos. After more years. Slaughter. Thanks, son. Now we can use this statue to finally get out of poverty. We can plant new crops, more crops than ever before. A middle-aged man spoke as he grabbed his son by the shoulder. He and his son had just killed the whole family that was guarding the statue. They even had all the papers that the family had kept about the statue, so they knew how to use it right. To think that those stupid people didn't even touch the statue. They didn't use the powers to make all the money they could ever want. Instead, they just prayed and meditated to it like fools. Please, please don't learn from history. Please, please don't. You killed my family, and I curse you. I curse you and your GRE. The only person left alive was an older woman who had been a member of the family. The only one whose cheeks weren't covered with tattoos. Moments later, she was killed when a spear was put through her throat. The mind of Naruto. Alright, so what's going on? It was really annoying to be able to feel people but not hear what they said. He knew there was more bloodshed, but he didn't know why or what it was for. The family who had his statue for many years died, and now new people were putting his body in boxes to move it somewhere else. What were these people thinking, and why did they keep killing each other for him? He didn't know what was going on, and that made him very angry. He missed the time when people would just sit next to him and meditate in peace, but now all the bloody things were happening again. Right now, I miss Kurama. People are bad, and you're the only one who is good. Well, Kurama, I know that humans are bad and that there is a cycle of hatred, but that doesn't matter to me because I want to change them. Naruto fought with himself over what he thought Kurama would say. He was stuck in his own head and couldn't get any older or try anything new. He has been getting more energy though. It was a strange feeling, and for a split second, he was sure he had felt some kind of liquid, probably blood, splash across his body. He couldn't feel anything, but maybe when blood splashed on his statue form, he started to be able to feel things again. He didn't know what that meant at all. The statue of the demon god? Yes, young man, this statue is possessed by the god of demons, and it has a long history of great bloodshed. But if you are worthy, you can wake up the sleeping demon god and bring about a big change in the world. Ajuka didn't believe in a lot of nonsense, but this old woman's claim about the statue next to her seemed like it could be true. He had heard about this statue many times. It was older than what people had written down. It was drawn on cave walls, it was in a lot of old paintings, monks wrote about it, and many rich people who died in wars after getting this statue in their possession had it. The statue's life force was very strong. He felt an energy that was very different from anything else he had ever felt, and the old woman in front of him put a flower bud on the statue's open hands. The flower opened up right away. The demon god. This statue feels very kind, bright, and sunny. Doesn't feel like a demon god. Ajuka didn't believe in nonsense, especially since he could feel how pure and bright the statue's energy was. It was very strong, and the power seemed to go on forever, but the statue's face told a different story. It looked like a 16-year-old boy. He looked kind and loving, and his energy was so pure that it felt like sunshine. To say that this statue was a demon god, you would have to only look at the story that people made up about it. He was Ajuka, who was a demon. I promise you that this statue is real. The man who owned the statue before him had his whole family killed and his village burned down. I'll sell you this statue because I don't need it, and I'll give you a prediction about it for free. A prediction. Are you a prophet, old woman? Since fortune-telling was based on magic, Ajuka did believe in it. It was a very rare kind of magic, but it was still magic. After all, he was a scientist. Ajuka, what's this? A young man with red hair walked up to him and patted him on the shoulder. They were supposed to make deals with people. It's a statue of a demon god, and if we buy it, it will tell us what will happen. Ajuka told his friend something. They only set foot on human land to get more experience and power so they could fight against their own people in a war. Sirzex moved closer. Doesn't look like a demon god. Looks like a guy the first would love to be friends with. Sirzex said this with a big smile. This statue of a man looked so kind and loving, and its energy was so warm and comforting. This looked less like a statue of a demon god and more like a statue of a kind-hearted young man. He should have known because he was a demon, and the energy of his own people was nothing like this. Holy cow, I know that statue. After a moment, Sirzex turned away. This statue had both started and ended whole civilizations. Well, it helped start them, but people who wanted the statue too much ended them. History books talked about how great this statue was and how it was cursed to kill anyone who wanted it for their own benefit. At the very least, that was what people thought about the statue, but those who lived in the supernatural world knew a lot about it. I know, but how much are you selling it for? Sirzex moved closer to the woman and asked her. So badly did he want this. This statue had to be taken away from humans' world and put away somewhere safe. It was too much a temptation for them. Not to mention that people who used the statue didn't need demons in their lives. I don't need your money. I want you to pay with your lives instead. It's possible that the old woman was joking with them. Not at all funny. Alright. In response to what the woman said, Ajuka cut his palm open and poured his blood on top of her head. The woman looked at him in shock for a moment before signing and standing up. You won't make us pay money because that would mean you'd be cursed by the statue. Instead, you want us to pay with our blood so that those who want the statue won't kill you. Ajuka understood what she said. He could tell that she was afraid of the statue and what it meant. Was she serious? Sirzex asked. Do you have a younger sister, you with the red hair? She pointed her finger at him and asked. No? Sirzex didn't know if he had any brothers or sisters. Red hair. I think that one day, red hair will be important for waking up the demon god and bringing peace or destruction to the whole world. Red hair. A boy with hair like the sun and eyes like the sky, a pure maiden who wants to escape her fate. Red hair will save or destroy your world, your species. As she pointed at Sirzex, the seer changed the way she spoke. The man had no idea what was going on. He was an only child, and everyone in his family had red hair. It was kind of strange that she said they were demons, but since he didn't have any siblings, he didn't really believe this prophecy. Cool. The Doom or Salvation statue. Ajuka just didn't put too much stock in the news. Yeah, it's fun, she said. After 100 years, cool. That Doom or Salvation statue is for real. Ajuka said this as he looked at Rias in her cradle while Sirzex stood next to him. He was watching over his sister with a smile on his face and a loving look in his eyes. That old lady said I would have a sister, so we should go apologize to her at her grave. We have made fun of her prediction for hundreds of years. Sirzex had to admit that the prophecy was starting to come back to him. It's hard to believe that we only went to that town to get contracts from a powerful person we knew. Sirzex would say that they went to that town because they felt a strong energy pulling them there. They thought they could use it in the war. Instead, they ended up with a statue of blood that is said to be very old. I still don't believe in prophecy, but your parents are horny rabbits, so I guess it was only a matter of time before they had a daughter. Ajuka still didn't believe what some crazy woman said was going to happen. He was just going to joke about it until this statue stopped being a statue. To be fair, because the statue had a bloody past, they had taken steps to make sure it wouldn't do the same thing in their world. They let each of the pillar families use the statue for 20 years before giving it to the next pillar family. It just so happened that the Gremory family had a daughter at the time the statue came to them. Pure coincidence. The mind of Naruto. Biwa. Naruto couldn't decide which thing was worse. He got his sense of touch back, but couldn't move any of his muscles more than a tiny twitch. Well, he could feel some things, but they were so small that it was like he was feeling them through a blanket. He had been trying for a long time to get rid of the Senjutsu chakra. He was able to make movements small enough that he was no longer connected to nature. This meant that the energy from nature was leaving his body. He believed. The statue of Naruto. A normal person wouldn't have been able to tell. A small piece of stone fell off the statue when one of the fingers moved just a little bit. Back on Naruto's back. It's going to be weird not being a Jinchuriki and not having Kurama's chakra inside of me anymore. I kind of hope to see that fuzzy jerk again. First, I need to get some fresh air. After that, I don't have any other goals. This is what it feels like to have hope to get out of hell. Naruto had been trapped in his own hell. He hated being alone more than anything else, but he had been living alone for many years. Not counting the stupid, fucking crow that would come into the room, peck him, and then fly away into the golden clouds. My name is Naruto Uzuchiya. Naruto Uzumaki. I should stop thinking about what I will say to the first person I meet. Naruto got up from where he was lying down in his mind. He was going to get out of his hell, and he knew that the first person he met was going to be blown away by how cool he was. Then he was going to try to remember things he had forgotten. Rias Gremory. She was a beautiful young woman with a beautiful, loving family that kept getting bigger as she added to it. She had a bad habit of taking in homeless people as servants, but she loved them as if they were her own blood no matter where they came from. She was nice to all of her servants, but she was especially nice to those she thought were cute. Wow, this statue is a little bit scary. Don't talk badly about Zaza. This statue has been an important part of demon culture for hundreds of years. Rias gave her queen a gentle lecture. She was proud that her family had owned it for the past 20 years. Look at those pecs, those boulder shoulders, and those abs. This statue is very old, but it shows the beauty of man in such a clear way. Rias liked art, and he liked this statue because it was so well made. It was made so well that it looked like the statue used to be a person, and legend said it was a demon god who had been sealed away. The statue gave off the best, most pure and gentle energy, which was different from the energy of her species. She was very pretty. She had also liked this statue since she was a child. When she was even younger, she would play on it and paint it, which got her into trouble. She had to clean the statue every time she painted it, which she did a lot because both painting and cleaning the statue were fun for her. She liked painting the eyes blue and the hair blonde because she thought those colors went well with this kind and gentle face. Bolder shoulders? Akeno Himejima asked. They had a nice shape, like the shoulders of a strong warrior who could really throw a punch. They weren't the biggest, but the statue's ripped muscles were just the right size and strength. It had the strength of big muscles and the flexibility of small muscles, which was a good combination for fighting. She didn't know much about the statue, but she thought that whoever made it must have loved warriors. Quit talking, I wasn't trying to be funny. Okay. But anyway, my name is Zaza. I thought that reading could be fun. Rias didn't know what the name of the statue was, so she called it Zaza. It was a clever name, since the statue was very strange to her kind, even though it had been there for hundreds of years. Akeno did nothing but stare at the statue. His face is kind and gentle, and he seems like a good man. Akeno just had this thought when she saw Rias reach out and touch the statue's cheek. So, you like this statue, right? Akeno asked with an eyebrow raised. She was still getting used to being a demon, but before Rias even got to the statue, she saw that some maids were taking very good care of it. Rias reached into her pocket and pulled out a flower. She then put the flower in the statue's hands, and Akeno just watched as the flower bloomed right in front of him. This statue is important to my people, and people have killed each other over it in the past. It's covered in so much blood, but doesn't he look so kind, loving, and gentle? Rias could only feel the statue's whisker marks on its cheeks. She could feel warmth coming from the statue, and she could only imagine what kind of person it would be if it were real. This is the kind of man that I wish I could fall in love with. Rock hard? Stop doing that. Rias frowned at the joke for a moment before she let herself laugh. Determined, strong, steady, loving, and kind. The kind of man who would follow me to hell and back, carrying the world on his shoulders. This statue's pure and warm power just makes everyone feel warm and safe, like they can put their faith in it. Rias was just like the other people of her kind. The statue was just a statue, but it had an air about it that made you want to believe it was a man. This statue showed how beautiful people are, and it did so in a way that made it look like the statue was full of love. Akeno said, Then he thought about it. Even though the statue was enchanted to give off an aura, it was still just a statue. She could see why Rias would want a man who gave off the same feeling as the statue, though. She could tell that if this statue were a man, he would look best if he were smiling. She didn't really care that much about men, but if she had to choose one, she would choose one who smiled a lot. She could picture this aura coming from a man who loved to smile and make other people smile. This is a nice place to relax, and I thought you might like to see this statue. We only have it for a few more years before we have to give it to the next pillar family. Rias sighed in disappointment. Once she lost the statue, she would have to wait hundreds of years to get it back. Oh well. I see. What's going on? Rias asked as she watched Akeno sit in the statue's lap with her legs wrapped around the statue. Akeno looked at her, and she smiled playfully at Rias as she moved her face closer to the statue's face. So what are you doing? Rias asked again, and this time he was even more confused because Akeno seemed to be going to kiss the statue. Reading seems boring, but doesn't this sound like the perfect time to practice kissing? Akeno would rather tease Rias than read a book at this time. Since it was just a statue, kissing it wouldn't really mean anything. But the lips on the statue were so well made that she thought it would be a good idea to kiss it in front of Rias. As she did it, she looked at Rias. The mind of Naruto. It feels like something is touching my lap, waist, and face. Damn, I wish I could use senjutsu right now to feel things. Naruto was trying so hard to get away that he didn't have time to use senjutsu. If he did, he would have to start over, and getting rid of the extra chakra would take a long time. Now that his sense of touch was almost back to normal, he could feel someone touching him, just like when someone brushed or cleaned his statue form. Outside. Zaza-san, you're such a good kisser. Akeno, you shouldn't just kiss the statue of the demon god to practice. That's not right. Rias had to agree that it did look like a little bit of fun. In either case, she grabbed Akeno by the back of her clothes and pulled her off the statue and right onto her butt. She got a red face just thinking about doing it herself. If someone caught her doing it, she would be so embarrassed that she would die. It wouldn't be the first embarrassing thing that happened to her, but it would be right up there. Just die of embarrassment, and even more so if the rest of her peerage saw her kissing the statue. It was bad enough that Akano did it, but if Gasper, Yuto, or Kaneko saw her do it, she would be the punchline to every joke. Spoil sport. That's not right. Late that night. This is not right at all. Rias felt like a hypocrite when she sneaked into the courtyard and sat on the statue's lap, just like Akano had done before her. She pulled her hair out of her face as she pressed her forehead against the statue's forehead. She looked out of the corners of her eyes to make sure no one could see what was going on. Rias had a good chest that was just a little bit smaller than Akino's. She pushed it up against the statue. It felt good on her breasts to be gently pushed up like this. She gave it a kiss. Crack. When a piece of stone hit her in the face and she saw a part of the statue break in front of her, Rias jumped off the statue right away. Oh shit. Oh crap. Oh shit. Oh crap. Oh shit. Oh crap. Rias was so scared that she was already getting tears in her eyes as she looked at the crack that had appeared right in the middle of the statue's face. She couldn't move because she was afraid of what would happen to her when everyone found out she broke a statue that her people had loved for hundreds of years. I'm so much in trouble. Rias spoke in a whisper as the crack grew. All over the statue, cracks began to show up. When the stone hand broke, a new hand was revealed underneath. The right hand of the statue gripped tightly as cracks started to spread up the arm. Eventually, the whole right arm broke, revealing a real arm. The right arm grabbed the statue's head and broke off half of the face, revealing the face of a person underneath. Rias's blue eyes met the statue's eyes, which were full of happiness, as more of the statue began to break and turn into flesh and blood. The statue's legs moved and broke, leaving only half of the face. But he took care of that a few minutes later when he punched himself in the stone face and broke down the last of his defenses. Naruto let out the breath that was in his lungs when he turned to stone. It was a breath so old and full of chakra that it made him happy to get rid of it. The way he breathed out showed how much pain he was in. He didn't take a deep breath yet because he wanted to enjoy it. Naruto took his first breath as a free man and savored every second of it. He loved every second of it. He could taste the freshness of the air and feel his lungs filling up with something he hadn't been able to do in a long time. He took in all the air his lungs could hold, and he held his breath so he could enjoy the feeling even more. Free me. Naruto yelled as loud as he could for as long as he could shout. So loud that when he yelled, lights began to turn on all over the Gremory estate. Rias jumped back in surprise and her cheeks began to redden. True love's kiss. Rias spoke in a whisper as she put her hands over her smile. She kissed him, and that broke the spell that had been sealing him. False. Naruto broke out of prison on his own, it was just a coincidence. Ha 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 ha. Naruto laughed even though he was crying. He was so happy that tears of happiness came out of his eyes. He bent over and held his stomach because the years he had spent in his own personal hell were finally over. He wasn't in hell anymore. Naruto is not in hell at this moment. From that lonely hell where he was all alone, he was now free and could talk to people again. He had hoped for years, and now he was finally free and able to do things again. Naruto straightened up and wiped the tears off his cheeks. Naruto was so happy that he could only do what made sense. He fell asleep while taking his first nap in an uncountable number of years. He fell on his back with the happiest look on his face. Rias was left alone with her thoughts as she looked at the great statue that used to be there and how it had been replaced by a person who was sleeping there. Naruto was sound asleep and happy. Naruto did what any sane person would do after not eating for millions or billions of years. He said, "Ooh, this is what eating feels like. I forgot how great food is." He asked the people who were closest to him if they could feed him, and then he started to eat everything that was put in front of him. I like him. Sirzex put his arm around Naruto's shoulders. When he first saw the statue, he knew he and Naruto would get along well. He was surprised when his parents called him over because they had a problem, and he was even more surprised to find out that the statue he and Ajuka had bought years ago was actually a real person. Also, the prophecy was true, which meant that this boy would either bring peace or destruction, unless the old hag's prediction that he would have a sister who would unseal this guy was just a coincidence. I like you too, guy who is feeding me food. Let me tell you something, you remind me of my dad. If I had ever met the guy, and he looked like you, and wasn't. You don't remind me of my dad at all, because I've never met the guy. What I meant to say was that you remind me of other people's dads. Naruto was so happy that he could talk to people again. Even though they weren't human, he didn't care because they looked human and these people were nice enough that he liked being with them. Thanks, but it helps that I am a dad. Dude, that's cool, I guess that means you got married. Is your wife a real beauty? Naruto asked, leaning forward between bites to hear all the gossip the man had to say. He just wanted to keep talking, and he would have kept talking until someone kicked him out of the room. He said so many things. The very best. Nice. Naruto and Sirzek's fist bumped again, and the two men started laughing to each other as everyone else in the dining hall looked at them. Noise of clearing the throat. It's great to see that you're having fun, Lord Zaza, but... My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and you can skip the formalities. I'm just a 16-year-old guy, not some ancient god or something. Naruto couldn't believe that this whole civilization had been passing around his statue for hundreds of years, treating him like some kind of demon god. I'm just a young boy from. He didn't remember where he was from. From? Ehehehehe. Guess I don't remember that, it's been a really long time. Naruto's smile was both real and fake at the same time. It was a real smile, but the carefree feeling behind it was as fake as it could get. The demons in the room could tell that Naruto was very upset about forgetting where he came from. But anyway, thanks for the food. Lord Gremory nodded. Lord Gremory said, it's not a problem, and you may be human, but our people have worshipped you for years, so your face does command some respect. His wife nodded her head next to him. The back of Naruto's head was scratched. I'm just a ninja. I'm not a demon or a god, or even a demon god for that matter. I'm glad you guys are so nice to me, but please don't be so polite. It's kind of annoying, right Kurama? Naruto asked as he turned his head to the right. Right, he was no longer in his seal, and Kurama was still dead, so he wasn't inside of him either. He had been talking to himself for thousands of years, but now he could talk to real people instead of just his own mind. Cool. Don't worry about it, Naruto said, and then he changed the subject right away. So, let's be honest, you're Rias, Lord and Lady Gremory, and Sirzek, my new brother. I like you all, and 3 of you have really cool red hair, so I'll grant you 3 wishes. Naruto held up 3 fingers. Everyone's eyes got really big. Naruto had a fart. Naruto pointed to Rias and said, just kidding, I can't do that, and to be honest, I'm a little distracted by how pretty this girl is right now. This is my first time seeing a girl in. Well, it feels like forever. If they were going to talk about something, he'd like her to leave the room. Every time he looked at her, she made him feel bad. Rias smiled. Thanks for getting nervous, it's nice to know you find me attractive. Attractive, you're a smoking hot babe. If I had a mother, I bet my ass she would approve of you for sure. Total 10. Right? Naruto asked Sirzek as he pointed to Rias. The girl's brother gave a thumbs up with his head. You should ask her out, she's a real catch. I know I should. Hey, Rias, do you want to go on a date? Go get something to eat or? What do people do on dates in this time period? Do you have movies? Are movies cool again? Naruto asked, looking around in a panic. Naruto looked around and said, this is going to be terrible. Do things like indoor plumbing, building machines, radios, and TVs still exist now that people are back? Yes. Those things do exist. Humanity came back? Well, I think the moon or something really powerful hit Earth a long time ago and wiped out my people, and then the dinosaurs. Or dinosaur-like things. Either way, this is humanity's second chance. I'd love to see what these new humans have made since they seem so weak. Naruto had sensed so many humans, but none of them had the same chakra that his people had. Some of them had something unique about them, but he could only tell which ones did because they were so rare. Where all of his people had chakra and could learn how to be strong. Hearing that humanity had once been wiped out was shocking, to say the least, since none of them knew enough about the world's history to know about it. It was even more shocking because it showed that Naruto wasn't just older than written history, but that he was even older than that. He was older than anything that could have started to write down his history, and he had lived through the end of both humans and dinosaurs. He was very, very old. Guess I should start calling you my big brother then. Sir Chan, I'm only 16, Naruto said. It doesn't matter how old my stone statue body was when I spent what felt like an eternity alone with a big fox and an annoying crow. And then just the crow. Just the crow that pecked me sometimes and flew away. Suffice it to say I'm no different than any other 16-year-old. He waved his hand at the statement. With mental trauma. Tons, I have tons of that. I bet you all have nightmares about being alone for a long time. I'm joking, but on the inside I'm dying from a crippling fear of being alone. Wow, you're very open about this kind of stuff, Lord Gremory said. This made him feel uncomfortable. He looked around and saw that his wife and daughter were acting like they felt sorry for the man in front of them. In fact, he was also feeling it. Are you sure you feel comfortable talking about this with all of us? Lord Gremory didn't want Naruto to feel bad or have to go through it all again. He gave them a smile. Sorry, I'm a motormouth. Once I start talking, I don't stop. I've been alone for so long that I just say whatever comes to mind. My filter is broken right now. I'll try to control myself, so just don't kick me out of your nice house. Okay? Naruto put his hands together to apologize. He needed somewhere to stay, and these people seemed really nice. Rias got up and moved toward Naruto. She gave him a hug. She tried to hug him, but Naruto moved out of the way and his cheeks turned bright red. Naruto? Wait. Give me some time before you try that. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? If you hug me, things are going to get really weird. For me. I'll get a nosebleed or something. I just know that if you touch me, and you do that thing where girls smell really good and are really soft. Naruto took a few deep breaths and jumped off the ceiling. Also, when Naruto jumped to get away from her, he jumped all the way to the ceiling. Searzex wanted to know more about Naruto, so he said, "That's cool. How did you do that thing on the ceiling?" Naruto turned away from Rias. It's called something walking. I can do it with my chakra, just like I can make copies of myself and make really small or big spinning balls. I haven't had to do this in so long. I vaguely remember my techniques, and I think I know how to do them. I haven't used them in so long that I guess a something walking comes naturally to me. Senjutsu for sure. He just spent the last forever stuck in stone because of Senjutsu. There was no way he would ever forget the training he went through to get that ability that locked him up for so long. Lady Gremory tried to move the conversation in a better direction by asking, "So who sealed you in stone? Do you remember?" There was a reason why Naruto was sealed in stone. Me. Huh? I'm the dumbass who sealed myself, Naruto said. Well, it wasn't me, but the tailed beast demon fox guy who lived in my belly. He's dead now, though. But it was one of my own powers that did it. For a moment, Naruto looked up at the ceiling with a sad face, but then he was all smiles again. Before he turned to Rias, he gave Lady Gremory a thumbs up. Naruto asked Rias, "By the way, what were you doing when I was unsealed?" She got a little red, but then she stood up, puffed out her chest, and looked at her parents so they could see what she had done. "I gave you the first kiss of true love, and that ended your curse." Searzex put both hands to his mouth and whispered, "That's so romantic." He was very happy that his sister had been the one to break the curse with a kiss. He looked at his parents, who were awkwardly staring at each other as if they were about to talk about something very bad. Rias engagement. Rias broke Naruto's curse with a kiss, the kiss of true love. At that time, Naruto was almost worshipped as a demon god in their culture. If Rias was the one who kissed Naruto to wake him up, then forcing her to marry another man would make a lot of people angry. He was sure that a lot of people would be upset if the demon god that a lot of people worship got married off with his true love. Wait, that doesn't seem right, Naruto thought as he put his hand to his chin. When he realized what Rias had just said, he turned bright red. Naruto jumped out of his chair and yelled, "You kissed me." Rias nodded her head. "Yes, it was my kiss that broke your curse, so I would love to go on a date with you," Rias said with a sparkle in her eye as she looked at her parents. As if she wanted them to disagree with what she was asking Naruto to do. "Of course, I do have to go back to school soon, vacation is almost over." Rias had to go back to her school and wouldn't have much time to date while on vacation. Searzex put his arm around the shoulders of Naruto. "Oh, you're going to love Kuo. It's a nice town with a great mall. You've been away from humans for a long time, so if you and Rias are going." Naruto gave Rias the finger. "You want to go on a date with me?" "Yes." "You actually want to date me?" Naruto asked as he pointed at Rias and then at himself. He vaguely remembered a time when he kept asking out a girl whose name he couldn't remember. But for some reason, he always got in trouble, and he could remember being hurt a lot. Me. You were actually saying yes to me asking you out? Naruto had to admit that he was very surprised that this hottie was saying yes. He had asked her out because he thought that if she said no, she would beat him up. He thought that was what most girls would say when he asked them out. Rias seemed amused. Of course I'm saying yes, because I want to date you. You seem like the kind of man who would follow me to hell and back. You're also very cute. Your whisker marks are adorable, and they make your muscular body look very fox-like. Rias had no trouble giving praise. She was making her parents feel more and more uncomfortable as she made them face some very uncomfortable truths. Yeah, that's the confusing part. Usually, when I ask a girl out on a date, I get insulted, beat up, thrown off a bridge, punched from thousands of meters away, or slammed into the ground, Naruto said as he turned to face Sirzex. Why do I remember the most painful parts of my life? He asked. It's very easy for us to remember the things that hurt us. That makes sense to me, but it's still hard for me to imagine a girl as hot as your sister saying yes to a date with me. Does she even know how she looks? She's super nice, and she has beautiful red hair. It's surprising she would say yes to me. I bet she gets asked out all the time. Naruto was talking about Rias right in front of her. When Naruto realized how rude he was being, he turned around and smiled awkwardly at Rias. But if you're serious, I am telling the truth. Then sure, I would love to go on a date with you. And Naruto's eyes twitched for a few seconds as he tried to remember something important. Lord Naruto? Thank you, Rias, for breaking my curse. Naruto walked up to Rias and gave her a hug. False. Naruto is stupid and forgot he broke himself free. This is a big misunderstanding. He's been alone for so long that his mind is broken. He passed out. Sirzex saw that Naruto had passed out with a burning red face, which meant that he wasn't lying when he said he had no resistance to women right now. He must have smelled Rias's perfume and shampoo, and he must have felt her big chest against his. He actually passed out, his sister said. I guess he'll have to get used to women again. Take care of my new little brother, Rias. Sirzex just nodded and went with the flow. She gave him a nod in return. He's suffered for so long, I'll take care of my boyfriend. Rias was so happy to have a boyfriend. He was her true love, so she knew that once they got to know each other, things would be great. His curse was broken by the kiss of true love, so there was no way she could say no to going out with him. She met the love of her life, a man with a heart so pure and good that he shone like the sun, but brighter. You want to use him to get out of your engagement? Rias let out a shocked gasp. Rias said, I'm not using him. This man is my true love, and our people have worshipped him as a statue. Surely you can see that being with my true love is more important than getting married. If you're worried about having pure-blooded grandchildren, you still have my nephew. They already had that. That sounds like you're just using him. I really want to be with my true love, or else my kiss wouldn't have woken him up, Rias said as she accidentally let go of Naruto. He woke up before he hit the table. I'm up. Sirzex pushed Naruto's head and put him between Rias' breasts. Naruto had to leave. Sirzex really wanted this young man to get better, so he said, he's out again. This is both sad and funny. Take care of him, sister. Sirzex asked everyone in the room a question that should have had a very clear answer. Actually, I think he should go see a therapist. Can we hire a professional therapist to help Naruto? Yes. Of course. That seems to be obvious. The idea was liked by everyone. She was going out. Once she got back to Kuo and school started, she and Naruto were going to go on a date. She was happy, but she was embarrassed that she had to say she had practiced kissing the statue of the demon god. Still, she was happy. Her parents were put in an awkward situation where they would have to break off her engagement, so she was a single woman. She also met the man she would marry. So Zaza is actually a guy who used senjutsu to turn himself to stone. Yuto looked confused as he asked her. She told the story to everyone on the train ride back to the human realm because Naruto was getting checked out by her family's doctors to make sure that going back into the human realm after being stoned for billions of years wouldn't hurt him. When she heard a certain word, Kaneko, the smallest of her peers, perked up. She suddenly looked interested in what was being said, even though she hadn't paid much attention to what was being said before. Senjutsu? Not quite the same senjutsu. Rias has been chosen for Kaneko. Well, it's kind of the same senjutsu, but instead of going crazy from power, he turns to stone. Rias set herself straight. The two senjutsus were similar in many ways, but their weaknesses were very different overall. It had something to do with how the people who used it worked biologically, since Naruto could sense senjutsu users on Earth. But he knew that they used it differently than he did, at least in the real world. Still a little uneasy, Kaneko tried not to show it too much on her face. Naruto is a very nice man, and I'll introduce you all to him when he comes to the human realm. After our date, of course. That had to be added by Rias. She crossed her legs and leaned back with her arms under her breasts, as if to show off both her body and her situation. Yuto, you're a guy, so what do guys want to do on dates? Rias asked the only person in her peerage who was a man. Even though she was a peer, she only had one man in her family. Her other male peerage member was as far from man as a man could be without being a woman. I have no idea. Helpful. Rias said that one of her cars could take Naruto for a ride. She always wanted to go on a drive-out date with a boy. She was sure he would enjoy it, and they could go outside of town or find a nice park to have a picnic in. Kaneko? Do you have any ideas? As Rias looked at the small member of her peerage, she asked, "Who are you?" The shopping mall. This is really helpful, thanks. Rias also liked that idea. They would just go shopping, probably to buy Naruto some new clothes. At the time, he was wearing clothes that fit him from one of their butlers. She was sure that her parents would buy Naruto more clothes before he went to the human realm, but she thought it would be more special if a girl picked out clothes for him. Or he could be like any other guy and not care much about what he wears as long as it's a color he likes. Using Naruto. So it all started the night before I was born. Please think about this. I'm serious, I almost died about 3 times before I was born. I was told that someone tried to stab me, blow me up, and then a big fox tried to stab me. Naruto remembered what Kurama had told him about how he was born. He didn't remember a lot of the details, but he knew enough to say that the night he was born was not a very good one. The therapist thought Naruto was making fun of him. People usually joke or try to make fun of a therapist when they say that their problems began when they were born. Oh. Okay? Yeah, my father is said to have called on the death god and given up his life as a trade. My mother was the giant fox host before me, so when they took it out of her, they knew she would die. So they put the big fox in me after it destroyed a lot of my home place. That sounds awful. I had a terrible childhood because everyone hated me and didn't care about me. Parents wouldn't let their kids come near me, so the kids started to hate me. I had to sit on the swing by myself every time. I'm very afraid of being alone, so I played mean tricks on people because getting yelled at was better than being ignored and not knowing why. Naruto remembered how much he disliked his own childhood. He didn't remember the people or the places where things happened very well, but he could never forget certain things. Even worse, the therapist wasn't making any notes. As Naruto told her about his life, she just stared at him with her mouth open and her eyes wide open. Who looked after you? Yes, I did. I got money every month, and as soon as I could walk and talk, I moved into an apartment. When I ran out of money, I ate anything I could find in the nearby forest. When I was young, I was often very hungry. No one took care of you. Of course not, because I was the demon child. That was easy for Naruto to say. After hours. You. As she hugged Naruto, the therapist cried into his shoulder because she couldn't handle hearing about his life. This was the 3rd time she had cried when he told her about important events in his life that not even he could forget. How can you be so steady? You shouldn't be. The therapist had no idea how a boy with such a good heart could have lived the life he had. As a species, humans were born bad, and they had to be taught how to be good. Even kids with good parents can grow up to be bad, but this boy didn't have anyone to watch over him or teach him right from wrong, and he turned out great. He was a good person in general. He was a person, but he was as far from being a person as a person could be. His heart was good by nature. He was like the sun. Children would lie to avoid getting in trouble or steal things they wanted because they didn't know any better. When this boy was hungry, he didn't steal food. Instead, he went out and found his own food. He didn't take the easy way out and hate everyone around him. Instead, he worked to make his life better. This boy didn't look right. His heart was so big and full of potential to love others that it made her feel bad about the family she worked for, the Gremories. I'm so sorry, we shouldn't have done that, what am I even saying? In shock, the therapist moved away from Naruto. She was about to apologize to Naruto for something she hadn't done, but his story had such a strong effect on her that she felt like she had really done the things she was hearing about. People's hearts can be moved by a story told by a man with a good heart who lived it. Don't worry about it. I'm sure that my problems just made you think of the bad things that have happened to you. Why don't you just sit down and tell me what happened? After hours. So you don't just want to help people, you project your own problems onto them. You like to listen to other people because you can project your insecurities onto them and talk to them about their problems, which makes you feel better about your own problems. Naruto gave the therapist a summary as they laid down next to him on the couch. She gave a little nod. Yes, that makes sense to me at least. It won't make you happy, though, because if you never stop projecting your problems onto other people, you won't be able to solve your own problems. It's one thing to share what you've been through with other people, but I think you should solve your own problems first. Then you can really help other people. Naruto spoke as he told what he thought should be done. She gave a nod and stood up. How can I do that, though? My father. Talk to him and tell him how you felt about how he always trained. You never felt like you could measure up to him, and you always felt like you were living in his shadow. Alright, I'll do it. That's exactly what I'll do. The therapist got up and started walking toward the door. She opened the door and walked right out of it, then turned to Naruto and grabbed his hand with both of hers. Thanks, Naruto. I'm going to talk to my dad. As she left the office, Naruto gave her a wave and then went to the couch and laid down. Let's go back to when I was 13. Wait a minute. Naruto got up from where he was lying down and looked at the empty chair next to him. He realized that he was alone in the room because the therapist had left to talk to her family about her own problems. There is something wrong here. Naruto thought about it for a moment. Did he just give himself therapy? So, how does this work as therapy? Sears came to see how Naruto's therapy was going, especially since Naruto was on his 11th therapist at the time. Imagine how surprised he was when his parents told him that Naruto had gotten 10 therapists to quit their jobs so they could get better, but he had made no progress in his own therapy. Pam. Naruto threw a punch that hit his opponent in the stomach. Good hit, that hurt. Naruto's opponent was knocked off his feet and sent flying across the room. His back hit the concrete wall and made a crater in it. The walls of the room they were in were at least 20 feet thick, and the crater was easily 5 feet deep and 10 feet high. It would be easy to add a few more people to. Sears was shocked to see that Naruto was being fought by his younger cousin. That felt good, but you leaned back at the last second. Either I'm really out of practice, or you're that good with your instincts. Naruto praised his opponent as he helped him get out of the crater he was in, his shirt ripped up around the stomach, a bruise starting to form there. Both Naruto and his opponent were gone. They met in the middle of the room, and when their forearms hit, Sears was pushed back a foot by the shockwave their bodies made. Sears' face was a little bit like Cyraorg's, but Cyraorg was taller and stronger than Sears. Sears would gladly admit that when it came to pure hand-to-hand combat, his cousin was miles ahead of him. He was a wizard, power-type fighter who used magic and a little bit of hand-to-hand combat. If you think about it like a video game, his cousin was a pure physical fighter who put all of his stat points into attack, defense, and health. He was solid. I think you're rusty, that should have hurt more, but your punch was a little off target. Cyraorg was having fun as he and Naruto traded another blow. Cyraorg caught Naruto's knee when he jumped up to kick him. You're faster than me, that's for sure. Are you a speed fighter? When he saw that the attack was just a trick to keep his hands away, he realized right away that he had made a mistake. He felt Naruto hit his right shoulder with both hands, popping it right out of place. His arm relaxed and Naruto's knee was freed, but then he leaned forward and pushed his hand into Naruto's face, sending him flying backwards. They landed in different places, and Cyraorg put his shoulder back in place before his feet even hit the ground. Actually, I think I'm pretty well balanced. You worked hard to get these skills. Who taught you this fighting style? It's very unique. I've never fought someone who could dodge attacks so quickly. Cyraorg and Naruto disappeared in a blur of speed. Sears just watched. Naruto said to Cyraorg as their fists hit each other, I learned this fighting style from Toads, but it's not as good without Sage Mode. I'm impressed by your stamina, because nobody has ever trained with me for this long before. Usually, their stamina can't keep up. When they hit each other with their fists, it made the room shake a little and caused cracks in the floor and ceiling. It was a little scary to find out that Naruto was a human, but he had superhuman strength, speed, and durability that most people couldn't easily have. Toads? Ha. That sounds crazy, but it must be true. It's crazy, and I can't place your martial arts either, but you're a master for sure. I've only fought a few people as skilled as you. Who are these warriors? Don't think about it, but my body does. Haha. Amusing. Searzex watched as the two fighters fought at speeds that put Night-class fighters to shame. Each of them was easily faster than sound itself. He heard their voices after they were done moving from one place to another. He could see their mouths moving, but he only heard their voices after they were done. Because of the time it took for him to see and hear, he couldn't help but smile to himself because he could see that both fighters were very amused. I'm good at taijutsu and ninjutsu, but I'm not very good at genjutsu. I think I know how to break illusions, but pounding my enemy with my fists just feels right. Naruto was hit in the stomach and knocked back against the wall. He changed his flight in the air, and his feet touched the ceiling, where they got stuck. He put his hands up and put his fingers together. Naruto shouted, "Make more Naruto's technique, temporary name." There was a second Naruto. That is an amazing technique. You split your energy between you and the clone. Did you also split your physical abilities? Asked Cyroorg as he blocked a punch from the clone but was pushed back a step.
Naruto landed on the clone's shoulder and kicked him in the chin.
The clone then popped out of an undercut to the jaw and hit Naruto in the face. Nope. That was just as strong as your punch earlier. Cyroorg jumped back and put distance between himself and Naruto before Naruto's feet could touch the ground. He took a stand and punched the air a few times, sending powerful shockwave blasts at Naruto. Naruto just crossed his arms in front of him and took the blows as they pushed him back. The distance between them was then closed by Cyroorg. Yeah, but they pop when they take even a little damage, and they don't bother protecting themselves from hits because they're disposable. And I think they have some other ability, but I can't remember what it is. Naruto uncrossed his arms and grabbed Cyroorg's fist with one hand, while the other hand swung out. In a split second, they were both holding one of the other's wrists with one hand, and they couldn't move. It's a hidden skill. I hope you remember it soon, or else this therapy will have been for nothing. So, taijutsu is hand-to-hand combat and genjutsu is making illusions. Would other techniques, like the Make More Naruto's technique, be called ninjutsu? Cyroorg asked Naruto as they fought with their bodies. You're very strong for someone with so little muscle. From the way you look like a speed fighter, but if you look closely, you can see that those muscles are built for power. Cyroorg had torn Naruto's shirt open to see his chest muscles. When he was dressed, he looked thinner, but when he took off his clothes, you could see how well trained his muscles were. They weren't just muscles built for sports. They were also built to kill people. Real warrior strength. Developed in a world where losing a fight meant death, so every muscle had to be built up to help people survive in a harsh world. Naruto moaned, "I've been training since I was a little kid." I guess that's what being a child soldier does to you. It kind of ruins your childhood, though. You said I was strong, but we've been doing this for 10 hours and you're barely sweating. I've never had a sparring partner last more than an hour with me before giving up. Oh, no. Searzex said when he realized something pretty shocking. Naruto got along great with people who could hit him in the face very hard, and he and his cousin were becoming very close. Even though they didn't look like they were trying to kill each other, they were trading killing blows with each other, and that was what helped them open up to each other. Both Cyroorg and Naruto were using deadly force against each other, but they were so well trained and strong that anything less wouldn't have been enough for them to call it sparring. We asked Cyroorg to help because most of what Naruto remembers about his past is that he was always training or in life or death battles. Regular therapists aren't trained to deal with a child as messed up as Naruto, so we used unconventional methods to avoid having more of our people quit their jobs. Makes sense to me. Searzex realized that there was a therapist in the room with him who was writing down everything that Naruto said and did. He was writing down what he could remember about Naruto's experiences while fighting with Cyroorg. Then, he used those notes to figure out how Naruto's mind was doing. It was very strange, but they were dealing with a child soldier who had been in the army for many years. In this case, common sense didn't work. Don't get me wrong, I just didn't know what to expect. Rias and Searsex seem kind of soft to me, and since you're demons, I thought you'd all have dark power and stuff. It's nice to see that there are some meatheads like me among you, Naruto said, both complimenting and insulting his sparring partner. As a punch went by his face, he leaned back. Cyroorg agreed to this, which isn't surprising, Searsex said. He knew that his cousin was a battle fanatic, so the chance to fight a human from a different time would be a treat for him. They were also close to the same age, though Naruto looked younger. At the same time, Naruto had fought in real battles a lot more than Cyroorg, and it showed. Cyroorg trained for a long time, but he was still a young devil who didn't have as much experience as Naruto, who had been in a lot of fights. It showed when Cyroorg tried to figure out what was going on with Naruto in the middle of a fight and ended up getting punched for it. While Naruto was fighting, he could read his opponent without taking his mind off of the fight. The difference in how it affected them was small but noticeable, but in a battle, that small difference made all the difference in the world. In the fight, Cyroorg couldn't get the upper hand. It looked like they were both strong, but Naruto was dancing his way through the fight. Cyroorg tried to take the lead, but Naruto was able to figure out what he was thinking and keep the battle going in his favor. At the same time, Naruto's skills were clearly out of date. Even though the battle was going his way, he wasn't at his best because his body wasn't moving as well as it could. Because he had been a statue for so long, his instincts to fight were weaker, which slowed him down. Cyroorg could never get the upper hand. At the same time, Naruto was too out of practice to deal a finishing blow without risking letting Cyroorg take control of the battle. It's beautiful to see two skilled fighters match up so well against each other. Is that what you see? Searsex knew that if that was what the therapist saw, she wasn't a fighter. She didn't have the right view of the battle. He could see that Cyroorg was having the time of his life, not because he was fighting his equal, but because he was fighting someone better than him. Cyroorg could tell that Naruto wasn't as good as he used to be, so he worked hard to help Naruto shake off the rust. Cyroorg didn't want to win. He wanted Naruto's skills to be completely fresh so he could lose to Naruto and see where he could improve. He tried his hardest to win, but he knew he was going to lose no matter how hard he tried. He used this fight to learn about a style of fighting that he couldn't beat, so he could get better. Naruto and Cyroorg both said at the same time, "You're amazing." Naruto thinks Cyroorg is the same as him, but Cyroorg thinks Naruto is better than him. It's rare to see two strong people who like to fight show so much respect for a new opponent. Searsex could tell that neither fighter was proud of how strong they were. It was beautiful because of this. They didn't match up well. Cyroorg was going to lose because his strength would run out. He was working harder at the fight, and his moves used up more energy than Naruto's. Naruto had already figured out what Searsex had figured out and turned the fight into a test of stamina. Not only that, but Cyroorg was getting hurt, and hurts add up over time. Dancing was going on. Cyroorg looked at Naruto's body and thought, "Phew. I don't see how I can take you down at this rate. My punches don't seem to be doing any lasting damage." He couldn't hit Naruto hard enough to stop him from getting back on his feet. "I'm an Uzumaki. What exactly does that mean?" "Kurama told me that my family was known for having strong life force, healing chakra, sealing things, and having a lot of chakra reserves. I always thought that my ability to heal quickly came from Kurama, but it turns out that was only half true. I'm more impressed that you can fight so well while hurt," Naruto said as he looked at the many bruises that were forming on his opponent's body, and that had already formed. "I can last a long time. That makes sense. Even the good things had to end." After fighting for a few more hours, Cyroorg was no longer able to stand on his own. He was down on one knee and covered in sweat and cuts. His hair was wet with sweat, and Naruto had hit him hard enough to make his nose bleed. Naruto was sweating, but his wounds weren't as obvious as Cyroorg's, and they would be gone in a couple of hours. "That was a great fight, but I'm still rusty. Let's do it again sometime," Naruto said as he helped Cyroorg get up. Cyroorg didn't hesitate to take the hand, and with a pull, he was pulled to his feet. He let out a deep breath. "Phew, I'm tired, but I can't wait to do this again. You have to tell me what that style of fighting is called, or did you forget?" "Frog Kata. Things related to Senjutsu are the one damn thing I will never be able to forget. I have trauma with Senjutsu." Naruto laughed at his trauma, but his voice showed the slightest tremble, which did seem real. Frog Kata was learned from toads. Yeah, it's not complete because I'm not using Sage Mode, but when you master this fighting style, you can learn to use your body to react to attacks at the last second. Though. The Frog Strike isn't good for sparring, Naruto said with a deadpan face. Naruto remembered training with Pa Toad to learn the Frog Strike. It really hurts to get hit by it, he said. Frog Strike. I can only use it in Sage Mode, but basically, I destroy my enemy's organs by slapping my hand against them and sending Senjutsu chakra through their body. Since it doesn't matter how tough my enemy is and destroys organs, I can't use it for sparring or training. Though it has been used against me. Naruto shivered when he thought about how he had to heal after having his organs damaged during training. He didn't remember it as much as his body still hurt from the attacks he had been through. Cyroorg cracked up. That sounds very bad. Yes, but I've heard that it leaves a pretty corpse and doesn't hurt the outside. I see, I noticed your fighting style didn't seem complete. It seems like you really need Senjutsu to make it work. Cyroorg had noticed this during their fight. Naruto just nodded. It uses Senjutsu to extend the range of my attacks, make them impossible to sense or dodge, and let me counterattack at the last second, Naruto said as he started to throw out P. Naruto said, I was training to get rid of that weakness when I turned to stone. I'm still thinking of a way to recharge my Sage Mode while I'm in battle. Well, kind of. I'm not too interested in Senjutsu right now. If someone was stuck in Sage Mode for a really long time, they might not want to use it again. What about storing Sage Mode in a clone? I saw that when that clone popped, the chakra in it went back to you, Cyroorg said. He had noticed this during the battle. Naruto took a moment to look at him. That's brilliant. I wish I had thought of that sooner, so I wouldn't have turned to stone. But I can already see some problems with that, too. Naruto could imagine that his clone wouldn't be able to gather chakra well if it was distracted by other clones. While a clone was gathering Sage Chakra, he would have to limit the number of clones he could use in battle. This would limit his style of fighting. But if he didn't have any clones collecting energy, he could really go all out with clones, but that would also use up his Sage Chakra faster. I'm sure you would have thought of it on your own eventually, since you seem to be very creative. I blame your memory loss for not thinking of it sooner. Cyroorg couldn't take all the credit for the idea. He knew that Naruto was the type of person who would have come up with the same idea sooner or later. More than anything else though, the strength of your chakra was too much for my Tuki. What kind of training did you do to get your chakra to be so strong? Cyroorg wanted to know if he could use the same training to improve his own fighting power. That made Naruto laugh in a nervous way. Part of it was being an Uzumaki, part of it was having a father with cage-level reserves, part of it was being an ex-Jinchuriki, and Kurama said there was something hidden deep in my chakra that he couldn't find. Naruto couldn't take credit for his training in this case. Even though he trained his body and skills to get where they were, most of his chakra, healing, and toughness came from his genes. Cyroorg hummed as he was thinking. Not very helpful, but without proper training you wouldn't have been able to use those gifts the way you do, so I'll still respect the effort it took for you to use that power. It's kind of sad that you weren't a loser like me. Cyroorg would have really liked it if Naruto was the same kind of loser that he was. Naruto had a loud laugh. Oh, I was a huge loser. I had to train with a pervert and toads before I was this skilled and strong. If my chakra reserves weren't as big as they were, I would have been way below average. The only things I was good at were lying and being creative. I was unskilled and kind of weak. Naruto had to correct Cyroorg on that point. I have a very bad inferiority complex that makes me not accept praise without putting myself down, Naruto said. At that moment, he realized one of his own problems. That was written down by the therapist. Can't take praise. Searzex told Naruto and Cyroorg, well, you two must be starving, let's go get something to eat. The therapy session was over. But for some reason, this kind of therapy seemed to fit Naruto much better than the kind his parents thought he should do. Using your fists as a way to deal with your feelings.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.